Have you noticed how Fruit Love Island looks completely ridiculous at first, and then somehow becomes weirdly impossible to stop watching? Because that's the part I think people are underestimating. On the surface, it's obviously absurd. It's AI-generated fruit characters in a villa, following a dating show format that clearly takes inspiration from Love Island. But the more you look at it, the more it starts to feel like this series is doing something a lot smarter than just making people laugh for a few seconds. And that's where the theory starts. I don't think Fruit Love Island works just because it's random. I think it works because underneath all the chaos, it understands exactly how reality TV gets people emotionally invested. That's the key. From what's publicly known, the series started blowing up in mid-March 2026 on the TikTok account AI Cinema, and within days, it had already pulled in millions of followers and hundreds of millions of views. By that point, the season had already developed a real structure: original islanders, recouplings, bombshell arrivals, hideaway episodes, and audience interaction. So even though the characters are fruit, the format is not a joke format. It's a real serialized system. And once you realize that, everything starts to click. The original cast reportedly includes pineapple, strawberry, cherry, kiwi, banana, grape, orange, and apple. Then later, bombshells like Blue Bella and Kokonick enter the villa and shake things up. There are also repeated references to Water Melina causing chaos, which is important because every reality show needs one destabilizing force. One person who keeps the emotional balance from settling for too long. And I think that's one of the biggest clues in the whole series. Because if you look at how reality dating shows actually function, they are never built around stable love. They're built around temporary stability that gets broken at exactly the right moment. That's how the audience gets hooked. You let viewers believe a couple might actually be solid, and then you introduce a new threat, a betrayal, a twist, or a recoupling. So my theory is that the real main character of Fruit Love Island is not any individual fruit. It's instability. That's what drives the season. The point is not to create one perfect romance and follow it to the end. The point is to create just enough emotional order for viewers to attach themselves to certain pairs. And then threaten that order before it becomes boring. That would also explain why characters like Water Melina seem to matter so much. A character associated with chaos this early in a season usually isn't just there for drama. They serve a structural role. They expose weak couples, reveal who's insecure, and force everyone else to react. In other words, they don't just create scenes, they reveal the true shape of the villa. And then you have the bombshells. Blue Bella and Kokonick aren't important just because they're new. In this kind of format, bombshells are basically stress tests. They arrive when things are getting too comfortable. Their job is to force the cast to show whether these relationships are actually emotional, or whether they're mostly strategic. Because that's the other layer here. I don't think Fruit Love Island is really about love. I think it's about performance under romantic pressure. Who stays loyal when a new option walks in? Who panics the second their couple is tested? Who was genuinely invested? And who just wanted the safest possible route to survive the villa? Those are the questions the show keeps asking, even if it asks them through AI fruit people. And honestly, that might be why this trend has become bigger than a normal meme. Most short-form viral content gives you a quick joke and then disappears. But this series is using short-form video to build long-form emotional investment. People are not just watching isolated clips. They're following a season. They're tracking relationships. They're picking sides. They're waiting for the next betrayal, the next recoupling, the next bombshell. That changes the way the content works. It stops being randomness and starts becoming serialized drama. And there's one more reason that matters. The audience isn't just watching. The audience is helping shape the story. Reports around the series say the creator encourages voting, comments, and suggestions, especially around drama and betrayals. So now the show becomes this feedback loop where viewers reward instability. The format gives them more of it, and each new episode raises expectations for the next twist. That means the audience is not just consuming the chaos, they're actively selecting for it. And that may be the smartest thing about the entire project, because once the viewers are emotionally trained to expect disruption, the season can keep escalating without losing momentum. In fact, escalation becomes the point. A stable couple is only interesting until the audience starts wondering how it will break. So here's the full theory. Season 1 of Fruit Love Island isn't building toward the most romantic couple winning. It's building toward the couple that can survive the most narrative pressure. Not necessarily the sweetest couple, not the most obvious couple, but the one that remains intact after chaos, recouplings, bombshells, and audience-driven interference. In other words, this season is not testing love, it's testing durability. And that's why it works. Because beneath the AI visuals and the absurd fruit concept, the emotional architecture is very familiar. Jealousy, loyalty, insecurity, performance, competition, public judgment, all of that is still there. The characters may look ridiculous, but the structure underneath them is exactly the kind of structure that keeps reality TV alive. That's why people are attached. That's why they keep coming back. And that's why Fruit Love Island feels like more than a passing trend. It looks random, but it isn't random. It looks disposable, but it's built to create attachment. And once you notice that, the series starts to look less like a joke and more like an extremely efficient version of modern reality storytelling. Subscribe and like.